Create the life you deserve and desire with my in demand Couch to Healthy wellness training program. During this 12-week program, you'll learn how to develop a health based mindset, discover your true, authentic self, create healthy eating and exercise habits, and get the tools, skills, and training you need to sustain a life of better health, more energy, and lasting happiness. The program is now 50% off for a very limited time. To get the link to this incredible program and special limited time offer, email me info at trainingwithcoachbrad.com or send me a DM message at trainingwithcoachbrad on either Facebook or Instagram. Achieving a high level of overall health and well being is probably a goal for nearly every person on this planet. And, as someone once told me, there is more than one way to climb to the top of the mountain, but only one top. In today's episode, I sit down with Alyssa Makowski Johnston, whose goal was just that, a better overall quality of life, starting with their health and well being. To that end, after trying the diet and exercise route to no avail, she chose to undergo weight loss surgery. In the end, weight loss surgery for her proved to not only be successful, but a life changer as well. We discussed some specifics of weight loss surgery, why she chose to undergo the procedure, what some potential side effects might be, how life has been for her since having the surgery, and some things to think about if you are possibly considering this procedure. As I said above, there are many paths to take. Weight loss surgery is another potential path on the overall health and wellness journey. Alyssa is nationally board certified in family nurse practice through the American Nurses Credentialing Center. Her subspecialty is obesity management. Alyssa also has interest in functional medicine, wellness, IV therapy, HRT, and aesthetics. She has over 19 years of medical experience and training and has traveled nationwide to learn in varying areas within healthcare. For more information, visit her website at www.wellbyamllc.com. On today's podcast episode, I've got Allie Johnston with me coming to us from Northern California. Allie, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much, Brad, for having me. I'm excited about this podcast today.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to have you too. I have so many incredible guests, and you've got a very amazing story that we're going to get into here in just a second. But the reason I like to have different guests and everything on here is because I like this podcast to be about a different perspectives and viewpoints on all things related to health and wellness, and as I say, health, energy, and happiness. And you've gone through quite the journey, I understand yourself, and we're going to get into that here in just a second. But so let's do that now. Actually, take us back. So a few years ago, you've gone through a weight loss journey. What was going on in your life?
It's been a handful of years ago, but 2018, I moved to Northern California permanently, and I say permanently because I was a travel nurse and I went back
Uh,
and forth across the country, and then I, permanently relocated here. And I had met my now ex-husband. We got married at the very end of 2018, and we were only married for a couple of years.
okay.
Um, our marriage was not the greatest. I found out really fast, like, he just wasn't the person for me.
Hmm.
And I was very, very sad and depressed during that time. And I had already thought years back, I would love to have a weight maintenance and not be dependent on medications for weight loss or a lot of dieting and rigorous exercise.
Hmm.
So I'd already had it in my mind, like that was a possibility to do weight loss surgery. But during the course of our marriage and then subsequent divorce, I gained a lot of weight, probably almost 90 pounds while we were married. And
In a
I
sh-
just,
in a, I'm sorry, in a short time period then too, about 2, 3 years.
yeah, less than 24 months. So,
Wow.
and I look back and say, oh yeah, I'm a healthy eater, but I know that I was probably binge eating, the worst that I ever had in my life, just because I was, as people, sometimes say, like, you eat your feelings, and I was just always down and not myself. And so I got to a point where I was close to 300 pounds, and I was just not happy. So I went down the journey of, exploring weight loss surgery, and my doctor referred me, and then I ended up having the surgery in March of 2021.
So what made you choose the surgery route versus, and I don't know if I would call it the traditional route or whatnot, because there's a lot to consider when you're going down that route to have surgery.
Yeah, totally. So, and if anyone has tried to diet or lose weight, in the standard American diet, or as
Yeah.
clinicians call it, SAD, it's very sad. Our diet is, nutrient deficient. And I had tried all the diets. I had, done crazy exercises. I had tried every prescription medication. Um,
Wow.
and when I had got to that point where I was like, I just want to look and feel good and be happy with my body, I just wanted, to do the surgical route. And because I'm a family nurse practitioner, I already knew the process because I referred patients to weight management at the time. So I kind of knew what I was getting myself into, per se.
Okay. So when you say you tried like the other stuff, every diet and everything, like what do you think, like why wasn't it working for you?
So I'm gonna go way back. So I grew up in the Midwest, originally from Ohio, and
Okay.
both my parents were, like lower class, blue collar workers. Like, we didn't make a lot of money. I grew up on a farm. A lot of meat and potatoes, and a lot of cheap carbohydrates. And that's what I was used to my entire, childhood into early adulthood.
Okay.
Um,
Standard
and
American diet.
yeah, yeah. And when I started college, I moved away. I lived about 8 hours away from where I grew up. So it was like the first time in my life where I could make my own food choices and exercise choices. And so in my early 20s, I had lost quite a bit of weight, probably like 70 or 80 pounds, just by diet and exercise. But as you probably know, as you age, our hormones play a role, and it's harder to lose weight as men and women age.
For men too. Yeah, I want to point that out
Yes.
real quick. Men
Yeah.
go through andropause as I'm experiencing now. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
for saying
So
men and women.
yes, men and women. So I mean, and I'll get into it a little bit later, but I treat men and women alike. I have patients that come to me that are male or female for weight management and hormone management. But anyway, I when I was growing up, my mother was morbidly obese. My father was always underweight, and they were like that, to this day. And I kind of had this, back and forth. Like, if I spent time with one parent, my mom and I always binge ate together, and my dad and I like exercised together. So I had, two different um, roles, I guess, And so into early adulthood, I just continued that binge eating, and I still really did a lot of exercise. But in my late 20s, early 30s, I was traveling as a travel nurse, and I just wasn't exercising like I was several years prior. Um, and I found I was still binging, and I, really wasn't getting better. Um, so just about, what year is it now? 2023.
Yeah.
Early 2021, right before I had weight loss surgery, I found a counselor that specializes in trauma and behavioral work. And she does something called brain spotting. And she helped me kind of try to eliminate my, binge urges prior to me having the weight loss surgery, because once you have a weight loss surgery, it's very difficult to binge eat.
Well, that brings up a good question. So yeah, you have certain habits before the surgery, and I've always been kind of curious about this. If you don't change the habits, how much will the surgery matter? And I don't know a lot about weight loss surgery. So your before habits and your after habits in terms of like eating, did they change at all or
Yeah, so I'm probably not the typical weight loss patient, because, like, I'm a nurse. Like, I feel like, other than my binge eating habits growing up in early adulthood, I always focused on, like, a high protein, low carbohydrate diet, because that's when I felt my best.
Mhm.
And I usually maintained weight. But because I was such a binger, later 20s, early 30s, it didn't really matter, what I ate or how healthy I ate, because I would be packing on, thousands of calories early in, the night, or, late at night. And So, to answer your question as far as like globally, for patients for weight loss surgery, or even if you're just trying to lose weight and you don't want to go the surgical route, if you don't change your habits and keep working on it,
Right.
the likelihood of regain is very high. I have patients,
So even with the weight loss surgery, so it's
yes.
still a matter of changing habits. So what were some of the habits you changed, and how did you go about doing that?
So, like I mentioned earlier, I met a counselor that did the brain spotting, and I still go get some brain spotting from time to time because it really helps me just kind of process the trauma that I've been through in the past,
Okay,
my divorce, family issues, and
okay.
I feel like I don't want to say I'm done with that work because I do it occasionally still, but that would be like number one. I would say, get into a good counselor. And even if they don't do brain spotting, there's lots of certified counselors that do EMDR, which is a similar brain therapy.
Mm,
And then for me personally, like I just had to learn a lot about nutrition. Like in
oh,
nursing school, yeah, in nursing school, they don't teach you a ton about nutrition. And I learned on my own. I did a lot of reading and research, and figured out what you're not taught in medical and nursing schools that can help you maintain your weight and things to stay away from to prevent long-term multi-system disease.
mm. Let me ask you this: how was your self-esteem, self-confidence, pre-surgery, heavier weight, and compared to post-surgery, lesser weight?
Yeah, I guess because I had surgery like not long after I got divorced, my self-esteem was pretty low. Prior to my relationship, even though I kind of went up and down in weight, through my life, I always felt like I was a confident person. Like I wasn't like, oh, like, I don't like myself or I don't love myself. I mean, and I think we as humans, we all go through that where, we are down on ourselves or feel down about our looks and therefore, our self-esteem is not that high. But at that particular time, I would say it was low, but not because I was obese. It was just like the whole picture of like my marriage was failing. I wasn't where I wanted to be in my career, and I was overweight, and I just didn't look or feel good anytime.
So did the surgery contribute overall to an improvement, would you say, in your health and wellness, I guess?
Yeah, so I'll kind of touch on the clinical things first. So before I had surgery, I had pretty high cholesterol. And I do have familial hyperlipidemia, and for those who are not in the clinical setting,
Yeah.
um, it's a genetic predisposition to a higher bad cholesterol. But I was, not eating the greatest, so I probably had a little bit, of course, of my own bad cholesterol. Um, and then I was pre-diabetic, which both of my parents are type 2 diabetic, and I did not want to go, further down that path. And I had really severe joint pain. I was diagnosed with osteoarthritis in my early 20s, and I
Oh,
was on all kinds of medications for it. And, post surgery, I rarely have joint pain. I don't take prescription or over the counter medications for joint stuff. I'm not pre diabetic anymore, and I don't have high cholesterol anymore. So, overall, like on paper, I look good, but I also feel really good. Like, I don't think I mentioned in the recording yet, but since March of 21, I've lost 110 pounds. So I'm feeling a lot lighter because I physically am.
now are you able to sustain that and keep it off, and you have healthy eating now, regular exercise program, or what's your life like now?
Yeah, so if I were to pan back 10 years, my exercises were really heavy. I was like in the gym lifting weights, doing all kinds of, machines and stuff. But really my like daily or weekly exercise really just involves walking, and I occasionally do yoga. Sometimes at home or sometimes I'll go to a class. So nothing crazy, I say, and it's not hard to do. And as far as diet habits go, one thing my surgeon, her office offered to do like nutritional counseling before I had the surgery. And I've just pretty much stuck to what the nutritionist said. You can have X number of ounces of water a day, recommended X number of protein grams per day. And I just pretty much stick to that. And I eat like every few hours, sometimes every couple of hours. And I've stayed at this weight since February of last year.
Okay, real quick, so you eat like what, 3, 4, 5 times a day, like small meals, something like that? And most
Yeah,
like, what's a typical meal for you now?
yeah, that's a good question. So, and this, of course, was drastically different before I had weight loss surgery. So, like this morning, I had one soft boiled egg, a little bit of avocado, maybe like a quarter, quarter of an avocado. Um, what else did I have? I can't quite remember because I know I ate something after. I think I may have had like a handful of nuts. I usually keep like nuts with me when I go see patients because my practice is mostly mobile. So I had
No.
breakfast and then jumped in the car.
Do
Um,
you do any, like, calorie counting or macro counting or micro counting, any of that?
The only macros that I count are protein, and I aim for a minimum of 60 grams of protein a day. Sometimes I have less, sometimes I have a lot more. And as far as like clinical studies go, like for weight loss, whether you had weight loss surgery or not, if your kidneys can tolerate high protein, I always recommend a high protein diet to my patients. And when I say high protein, I mean like over 100 grams of protein a
Oh,
day.
that is yeah, that is a lot, wow.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that can some of that be liquid, or does it all have to be, like,
Yeah, no,
plant or animal, or does it matter, or
yeah, no, you can definitely have liquid. So the one thing that a lot of surgeons nationwide require their weight loss patients to do before having weight loss surgery is to do a liquid diet, and you're basically just drinking protein shakes for 2 weeks before surgery and
wow.
Gatorade to stay hydrated. Yeah. So I don't really much anymore, but I was in the habit of just having protein shakes a couple of times a day, every day. But if I'm really like wanting something sweet and protein, I'll just make a protein shake.
So I just lost my train of thought here. Oh, I know what I was gonna ask you. Do you do anything like intermittent fasting? Is that part of your overall health regimen?
So before I had weight loss surgery, I tried to do that. And when patients tell me like now, I feel like I completely understand because it's really hard to do if you're used to eating a lot of calories. And so now I do intermittent fasting occasionally, not every day, because if I feel like if I did it every day, that it would induce those cravings or desires to binge, even though I physically can't anymore.
Mhm.
I don't want to get to the point in my day and I haven't ate for 12 or 18 hours where I'm just like starving because you can't, after having the type of surgery that I had, you can't just like force feed yourself like a large volume of food at one time.
Yeah.
So, I maybe 2 to 3 times a week, if I'm just really not feeling hungry in the morning, I'll intermittent fast for 12 to 15 hours, like no more than 16 hours.
Okay, okay. Now, I wanted to ask you this a little while ago, but so going back to your surgery, I don't know, are there different kinds of weight loss surgery? Like, what exactly was yours?
Yeah, good question. So, years and years ago, they did a surgery called the lap band. A lot of surgeons nationwide are not doing it anymore, and basically, it's an easy surgery to do. They put like a plastic ring around the top of your stomach, and it prevents your stomach from getting fuller faster. But there was a lot of issues with that surgery. A lot of patients ended up in the hospital, with complications. And so, from my knowledge, most surgeons nationwide, not all, but most, are not doing that surgery because the complication rate is so high. So that's one, or was one, weight loss surgery. There's also the classic Roux-en-Y gastric bypass,
Okay.
and that term is basically, if you can think of the stomach anatomy, like they chop out the stomach and they reroute the top of your stomach and esophagus to a part of your colon, which is called the duodenum. And so that creates what we call a pouch that's very small, like the size of a golf ball. I did not have that surgery, but that's an option. And
Okay.
then I had, yeah, then I had what's called the vertical gastrectomy, or they call a sleeve gastrectomy. And basically, they take like a tube and put it over your esophagus and the top of your stomach. They cut off the bottom part of your stomach and leave a pouch that's like the size of a banana versus like, the size of a golf ball. So you have a little bit of a larger pouch. And I've heard surgeons in weight management say this, and I say this to my patients too. If you have 100 or less pounds to lose, you would go for the sleeve if weight loss is your only goal. Or if you have 100 or more pounds to lose, you want to go for the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass.
And is the size of the pouch that determines like how fast you get full then? Like more
Yes.
food or less food, something like that?
Yes. So, and I have clients and colleagues and friends that have had the sleeve and the bypass. And they tell me, even separate conversations, they tell me, like I can only have, so many quarter cups or half a cup of food at a time or so many ounces at a time versus the sleeve. You can have a little bit more once you're used to it, because it takes a few months to kind of reacclimate your body and your stomach to like solid food and liquid again.
Okay.
Um,
One more question I'm curious about. What role does age play in this? Like would you recommend this for someone in their early 20s or late, I don't know, 50s or 60s?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I don't know if I mentioned it on this recording. I know we talked about it earlier. So I had the surgery right before I turned 32 years old. And I had thought about it for many years, prior to that, even in my
And
early
you're
20s.
almost how old now, Allie?
I'm 34 now.
Okay, so a little almost going on 3 years ago then.
Yeah, so because yeah, I told you I'm almost 35. So but to answer your question, I do have patients that are in their early to mid 20s, and even older. Like I have a lady that's in her 60s that is considering it. They haven't done it yet, but really the thing that I assess is like, do they have comorbidities, diabetes specifically, hypertension, high cholesterol, and do they have the weight to lose, and do they not have body dysmorphia? And that could be a whole nother podcast. But my role as a primary care provider would be to assess those things, make sure they fit the criteria, because insurance only covers for certain criteria unless you want to pay out of pocket, which is very expensive to pay out of pocket. And then I refer to the surgeon, and then they take it from there. They say, do you really, really fit the criteria that your primary care provider did? But yeah, to kind of go back and answer, like, really anyone at any age, as long as they're an adult and they realize what they're getting themselves into, they could benefit from it.
Well, let's say they're not eligible for the surgery. What is your approach towards them and health and wellness in that situation? When for whatever reason they're not eligible, do you help them to become eligible or something? Or
So I do have patients that are borderline BMI or body mass index, because the number one criteria, and the criteria has recently changed, but the number one criteria is a BMI of 35 or greater. The criteria got approved a few months ago to get approved at a BMI of 30 or greater with a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. And with a BMI of 35, you don't have to have, one of those diagnoses. But I have had a handful of patients that are like right on the borderline of a BMI of 35 without diabetes. And I tell them the pros and cons of weight loss surgery or weight loss medications or nothing at all, like just, diet and exercise and nutrition. Most of them don't want to gain weight to qualify for the surgery. And that's understandable.
that'd be even a lot. Like let's get an extra 10 pounds so you're eligible for the surgery. Yeah.
Yeah, and patients do that, and in my field, I think that's fine, because longevity wise, like if we're talking about being well and physically and mentally healthy, not just on paper, but feeling your best and looking your best, like for somebody, like if somebody my age came to me and they were like, would I benefit from this? I say, do you want to live another 20 or 30 years or another 50 or 60 years? And do you want to live either one of those, chunks of decades well? And a lot of people kind of like cock their head and say, oh, I never thought about that, because I have a lot of 60-year-old patients that are not well and they may not live another 10 years. So, somebody who's considering it and they're not the BMI, I tell them the pros and cons. If they are the BMI, I still, go over the pros and cons, because there are definitely weight loss patients that out there that come to me for weight loss medications, and they are like, nope, I don't want to hear anything about surgery. And so for those patients, we discuss medicinal, medications to take for weight loss.
Okay, so what are your tips and whatnot for approaching health and wellness then I guess overall? Like do X, Y, and Z or like what would you say?
Yeah. So, and I don't know if I mentioned at the very beginning, but I don't only treat weight loss patients. I also do primary care. So if you're, going to your doctor or, going to the clinic to see your provider, I treat those, general patients. I'm a family practitioner, so I see kids all the way to, 100 plus years old. And in general, tips and tricks for wellness, as far as diet goes to help with longevity and your overall wellness, avoiding or eliminating sugar, alcohol, and flour. You will be healthier longer if you do those those three things. And the patients that are already diabetic, hypertensive, have high cholesterol, and obese, or any mix of those, I really push those lifestyle modifications, because a lot of patients are not going to make radical changes. They're not going to go have surgery. They just aren't. That's just how our society is. They want a quick fix, a pill, something to do, right now. They don't want to wait. So, but I still encourage and push lifestyle modifications as much as I can, because I know the benefit of them. I've personally experienced them, and I see what it does for my patients' overall well-being.
That's interesting. Where do you think we're going as a country with all this in terms of the SAD and health and wellness? I know I've had this conversation a couple of times, but I'm curious, what are your thoughts on it? You have, and maybe another time if I'm in Northern California, we'll sit down for coffee, because you have one approach, to health and wellness and weight management. I have, another approach in philosophy, but it's just curious, if you look at the world today, well, at least the United States, Western countries, it's like we're getting less and less healthy. So maybe you're over um, your business is booming, I guess, for lack of a better term. You've got too many patients, which ironically is a good thing, but not a good thing because so many people are unhealthy.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to preface what I'm going to say with, I am not a highly political person, but our nutrition in our specific country, the United States of America, and our healthcare, is symptom management, and it's highly politicized. And if
I've
someone
heard
is
that
listening,
I've heard that from other doctors too. It's highly politicized. Yeah.
yeah. And if you are listening to this podcast or watching this, if you know anything about healthcare, whether you're a medical professional, or you're a medical consumer, if you're blind to that, you should, do your own research. I'm not going to try to convince somebody that the system is broken. And that's one reason why I left the clinic setting and the hospital organization groups, because I wanted to be able to treat my patients the way they deserve to be treated and give them the time that they need. Like 5-minute appointments don't do it for 99% of patients.
Right.
So, I spend 30 minutes to an hour with most of my patients, or whatever they need. Like, I had 2 patients this morning. I spent 45 minutes with one and an hour and a half with the next one. And that's what I do. But as far as where we're going as a country nutritionally, I don't foresee our global picture of nutrition in America getting any better. I think it's going to continue to be highly monetized, and large food companies and big pharma is going to continue to only bankroll more, and it's not going to benefit most consumers in the United States.
It's the food side anyway has become very capitalized, and we're a capitalist country, so it has become economics over health. Let me just ask, I'm just curious your thoughts on this. So I approach it with this idea, supporting better health, more energy, and what I call greater happiness. What would your thoughts on that be? How do we help folks to have better health, more energy, greater happiness?
So, and this is multifaceted, because it doesn't, start with a healthcare provider. I think it starts at a very early age, like, preschool, kindergarten,
Mm,
early childhood development is where we're kind of indoctrinating our population of human beings in our country, to say, this is what health or happiness, or even, good energy looks like. But it's doused with all of this poor, food and nutrition. And so, or I shouldn't even say doused, it's, flooded with, poor food and nutrition. And if we, as America, as a country, as clinicians, if we make the effort to educate our parents to tell their kids, and then schools to tell the kids, I think we could make a huge shift in this country. But I'm not a negative Nancy, but I just don't foresee that happening, because it would take huge sweeps of political change.
yeah, that's a very big political uphill battle. Yeah, you're right. This just question popped in my head. I'm just curious. Are there any side effects from the surgery? Any downsides? Something that scared you or anything like that?
Yeah, I'll touch first on, I've had patients that have had scary complications, that have gotten really, really sick from
Complications, yeah.
weight loss surgery, like severely dehydrated, infections, leaks in the gut, those things are scary. And
Yeah.
I'm very thankful and blessed, those none of those things happened to me. I had surgery, at 7 o'clock on a Friday. I was home at 6 o'clock that same night, and I went back to work in less than 7 days.
Wow.
Um, you know, and since then I've only improved. I've continued to lose weight. The biggest side effect that was a bummer as a female was I lost a ton of hair. And that's natural when you have massive weight loss. My hair is starting
Hair
to
on
go
your
back.
head or like your
Yeah,
legs too, or
yeah,
okay.
yeah, hair on your head. So, and for you, it may not like if somebody like you, it wouldn't be a problem if you needed to lose a bunch of weight.
Trying to grow it back, yeah.
But so that was a bummer, and I went through a phase with really thin, hair, and I still keep it pretty short because it's hard to grow. But as far as like cons or things that like you feel like you can't do is like just can't eat a ton of food. You can't like go out and eat a huge plate of food with your friends. Like you're always going to take leftovers. If you get drunker faster if you're drinking alcohol. So, those could be like things to stop you if you're like, oh no, like I really enjoy drinking an entire bottle of wine or something. Like you just can't, or you're going to do it over several hours, and it may not be enjoyable for you.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I could go on for a long time with this. This is fascinating for me. Real quick, you have a website
Yes, you
about?
bet. Do you want me to share it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you can reach me at wellbyamnursing.com. That's WELLBYAM nursing.com. And my website is currently under construction because I just got a new website guy. Because somebody mentioned it to me earlier. They were like, oh, I can't find X, Y, and Z on your website. I'm like, oh. So if you don't visit me on my website, you can visit me on Instagram. My handle is Ally V Johnston, ALYV as in Virginia, Johnston. And on Facebook, my full name, Alyssa Makowski Johnston. And I have a free Facebook group where I post health advice and nutrition advice, usually every day or several days of the week. And I'm reached on any of those social media sites.
Now, do you do consulting then, like online, virtually, Zoom, or is it just in your clinic?
No, so most of my patients actually are referrals from other patients, so people that I've never met before. And if they're not local to Placer County, California, which is in Northern California, I do a Zoom visit or like FaceTime if they want to do FaceTime. Or if they are local, they can come to my clinic, but I primarily do virtual visits. And if they're out of California, I cannot prescribe in other states because I'm not licensed in other states right now, but I can do weight loss coaching if someone was interested. And I have had patients do that out of state before.
Okay, okay. Well, Ali, it's been a true pleasure. This has been fascinating for me. I'm going to have some other questions for you off camera, but before we sign off here, you've said a lot of good stuff today. Is there anything else, any final parting words you'd like to say for the good of the order?
Sure.
Good of the food?
You know, for anyone out there, whether you need to lose weight or you're a healthy weight or you have any kind of health issues, know that it's a journey. It's not fixed like that. Whether you have 20 pounds to lose, 300 pounds to lose, if your diabetes is out of control or any number of other things, that give yourself some grace, and work with your provider to get you where you want to be and whatever your goals are. But just know that it takes time, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I would say, again, my goal is to provide information on all things health and wellness, and to have better health, more energy, that lasting happiness. Weight loss, surgery is one of those options, and Ali is a good one that you can explore this option with if it is right for you and best for you. If you feel that nothing else has worked or anything like that. So, Ali, again, I really appreciate you being here. And for the listeners, if you've made it here to the end, I always like to say thank you and reward you with a free gift. So today's word of the podcast episode is nurse because Ali is a nurse. So if you DM me the word nurse, I will send you completely free my wellness walking for health program. It's a couple $100 worth of it. Well, it's worth about $300, but with the research that's gone into it, it's worth several $1,000s. But anyway, it's yours completely free. Just DM me the word nurse for watching this episode all the way to the end. And wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure and hit that subscribe button and leave me a 5-star review. And I will put all of Ali's social media handles and website contact information in the show notes. So look for it there. And until next time, this is Coach Brad saying be well, be safe, be happy, eat ice cream. Thanks, everyone. Take care. We'll see you next time.